Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Surviving UX podcast. Jessamyn and I didn't really mean to take a summer hiatus, but it came for us anyway. Jessamyn, how is your summer going?
Hey Meg. Well, summer's been a butt kicker. We are without AC at the moment. Our AC conveniently broke, so it is pretty toasty
Oof.
upstairs.
What
Um,
what are you doing to
yeah,
stay cool?
I have a fan going. I did open a window, but it's so humid outside, I just ended up closing it. And it's that feeling. I don't know if you ever like took a yoga class once upon a time and you'd walk into like a workout room at like a gym, and
Mm-hmm.
like some high intensity class would have just ended and all those stinky sweaty people are like exiting, and you're coming in and you're laying your mat down, and then somebody walks around and like turns off all the fans to like quiet the room down, and you're like, keep those fans on please, it's hot. And that's the feeling. It's very sticky. It's uncomfortable. The good news is it's not as hot as other places that we went to recently, including Texas, which is
Mm.
like being on the sun. It is insane. So thankfully Virginia is not that bad right now.
Speaking of Texas, you were there, as we've alluded to, or we've talked about in other podcasts. You were there for UXPA. We haven't even had a podcast since that event. I had plans to meet you there. I had plans to at least like try to record an episode, at least closer to the time that you went. But of course, best laid plans. So tell us a little bit about what you remember now that it's been a couple weeks. Maybe some good memories have stuck, not just the heat.
So I'll be honest with you, Meg, like my husband and I have been like, was this trip worth it? I'm not
Mm,
sure. I'm not
hmm
sure because it was a lot. We
hmm
we were all in. We booked ourselves a week in Austin because we're like, we'll go, we'll enjoy, we'll have extra days to go do stuff. But it was
Oh,
105
oh my gosh.
the entire time we were there. They were having an insane heat wave. And so the kids, nobody wanted to go outside or do anything. We did force ourselves to walk around downtown Austin for one afternoon.
Hmm
And it was so brutally hot. It was just everybody was miserable. And the kids were just looking at me like, Mommy. And I'm like, I'm
Oh,
sorry. Let's
yeah.
let's sit here and eat. And I even made us eat one afternoon on like an outside patio because it
hmm
was so pretty. I mean, there were like beautiful places to eat with like beautiful trees and like sidewalk cafes. I was like, cool. And everyone just had sweat running down their face, and we were just splashing water on each other. It was like that point where you start to just say like nothing matters anymore. And you're just like slinging ice and water on each other and on the kids, to stay cool. It was a lot. It was a lot of heat. So the conference itself was nice. I
hmm
mean, I met a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to be around so many UX people. I
What was
think
that like?
it was disorienting, honestly.
Tell me more.
um,
When you say
it's like,
disorienting, what do you mean
that
disorienting?
phrase, like you see yourself coming and going.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I sort of realized like I'm one of many, and there's lots of other old battle axes out there just like me
Mm.
who are on these, teams sort of doing the Lord's work. And I guess I thought I was special, but I'm not that special.
Mm.
So that was the impression I got. And that's probably as a result of, you know, being at home for 3 years. I think not
Yeah.
being around so many people.
No,
So
I agree. I feel as if like I I don't remember what it's like. Like if I went to a conference, I feel like I would feel that way too. Like oh my gosh, there's so many people like me. Did you like find your doppelganger? Like your other
a
Jessamyn
couple
Miller?
of them,
Or
yeah,
sorry.
there. Jasmine Edward. No, there's a couple of them out there. I mean, I was really inspired, honestly. There were the keynote was the director of design for Etsy, and she talked about her whole mental health journey and like
Wow.
how she's done all of these, like every therapy you can imagine, inner, outer, um traditional, medicinal, Western, Eastern, And she got into this interesting conversation about tarot cards
Hmm.
that I was not expecting. I don't think anyone was expecting, and how she uses tarot cards as design prompts. So I don't know
Hmm.
if you've ever done tarot. I have never really done it. I've just sort of heard about it here and
Yeah,
there.
seen it in movies or so,
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Like somebody else is doing it, not me. But she'd be like, "Hey, like here's this card," and it like played upside down, and so that could mean this, that, or the other. And it's sort of like, astrology, where it's really open-ended,
Hmm.
and you could say like, "Hey, today is the day, big things are going to happen," or like, "Ooh, today's the day to take it easy." And you're like, okay, whatever that means." So she like used those kinds of open-ended things as like design prompts, which I thought was really interesting, as a way to like explore solutioning.
Mm.
Like, like, hey, this experience could be like this, or it could be like that. And I'm like, huh, because tone is a big part of design. Like, how are we messaging this? Is this going to beat you over the head? Is this going to be
Hmm.
kind of subtle? How loud or quiet do we want this information to be?
Hmm.
So I felt like it was apropos, but I definitely threw people off who were like, huh, tarot? But
It's
I
kind
tried to
of,
roll with it. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes when I'll be in meetings and obviously like I'm remote, so like I'm not physically in the office with these people. Sometimes, someone who I think is like a person like who has kind of like a mind that definitely like maybe thinks outside the box or encourages kind of like a different viewpoint, especially if you've been stuck in deep in what you're doing. And like they'll come up with like kind of, something like, oh, well, what if we thought about it like this? Or what if we changed the approach to being, more, for example, with tone, like less about you needing to do something and more about like us as a company doing, like hey, like we understand where you're at, or some just kind of like switching perspectives. And like now what you've said, it makes me think, I wonder if they just have a pack of tarot cards at their desk and that's how they get all their great ideas.
Yeah. I mean, like cards were a big thing for a while. I don't know if they're still popular, but I remember a lot of people used to have, IDEO would put out decks, and
Hmm.
there'd be like method decks and prompt decks and these like fancy cards that people would produce and sell. And it would be like, hey, I've got these design cards hanging around my, desk, and I'm going to pull
Hmm.
these out and look at them, and it's going to help me. Um,
you and
you know,
I you and I
yeah.
can make a stack of or a deck of those for surviving. And it's like one of them's like, have you eaten a snack yet today? Like make sure you eat a snack. Like, are
Like,
you are
deal a
you
meal.
are you so incredibly hot in your house because your air conditioning doesn't work? Go take 4 showers.
Right. Right. I definitely I would agree. I think that stuff is like, how much blue sky thinking are most designers doing on any given day, where
Mm,
a prompt where it's like, hey, how can we reimagine this whole experience? I mean,
that
the
doesn't happen to
fight
me.
no, exactly. The fight that I'm fighting most of the time is like, you did too much. Too much thinking, too much reimagining, too much rework. Nobody wants to do any of this. Like, that's the conversation I'm having half the time.
Hmm.
So I feel like I've learned to be very conservative and be like, hey, here's a little something. What do you think? You
Hmm.
like it? You think you might want to do it? What do you
Hmm.
think? It's like, hey guys.
Yeah.
So I definitely, I mean, to me it's almost, I know this is going to sound so terrible. This is the mark of like a junior designer, is like, hey, I went and redid everything and rethought everything. Here it is. Okay, you do it. You follow these mocks, or else, it's like, you're never going to get anywhere with that attitude. Like, it's a push pull. There's always a push
Yeah.
pull. And the
I
people who are
have, yeah.
implementing it like don't care about your ideas. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like the slight upside is like they have, there's less in their portfolio, or there's less like content that they've created that they can like speak to. The bummer is that yeah, it's like sometimes though you might have this like great package of something that you want to share with other people or talk about, and then the question always becomes like, well, what was implemented from this? And oftentimes it's not, you know, it's not the imagined grand vision that you had. Which actually
Right.
is not a bad segue into our topic for today. So our because that kind of situation that you're talking about, Jessamyn, is you know is exciting and and it makes you happy and encouraged and confident when you're working on these big grand designs. But then there's also the often the reality that you know these things aren't going to be implemented, or they aren't going to see the light of day, or you're going to have to work so hard just to you know maybe have a tiny win, and maybe it'll take months or years. So I think this is a perfect example of the bittersweet. And the topic for
Mm.
today, we're going to talk about I during my recovery that I was doing over the last couple of weeks, I reread the book Bittersweet by Susan Cain, and I read this book last year. It really like had an impact on me, and just with everything I'm going through with health stuff, like I decided to read it again, and this time really um pay attention, no, really like get into it a little bit more. So Susan, so this is a little this episode is going to be kind of focused on some of the topics that she talks about in the book Bittersweet, um and kind of like some of the thoughts of how that would intersect with the kind of work that we do. This author also wrote Quiet, which I don't know if is a more popular book than Bittersweet, but
Mm.
it's the book that she wrote about the power of introverts, which I think many folks have, like not many folks, but like I think that's something that I've come across in the UX community, that introverts, you know, like how do you be an introvert in this profession? I have not read that book, but I've heard it's pretty good. You know, that would also be one to check out. So this little book report, I'll give you a little background. So it's a book that really looks at like a melancholic approach to life. And Cain writes that bittersweetness is a quiet force, a way of being, an authentic response to being alive in a deeply flawed yet stubbornly beautiful world. And I really liked that quote because you know, like that's what we have to do day in and day out, is like we keep being alive, we keep doing what we're doing, our jobs, our parenting, our you know, our focusing on our health and wellness in a world that often can either be very terrible or be really really beautiful. And so how do we hold these things that seem like opposing forces in ourselves, and especially here like in America or other places too, but we live in this atmosphere that where we like prioritize achievement and success and happiness and victory, and this keeping up appearances where you are avoiding like the bitter parts of life or keeping those things hidden. And I know I've done this a lot recently. Like I have, especially dealing with my cancer diagnosis, like when I talk about it, when I don't talk about it, is like sometimes a choice I'm making to kind of like not bring that up in a space where like it's happy and joyful, and I don't want to bring in that, you know, that side of things. Um, and she also writes that you know we're under an ever increasing pressure to feel like a winner in a society that produces relatively few of them.
Mm.
um and so that's a little background on the book, and then chapter 6 specifically, which I thought really we could talk about in terms of like jobs and work and that kind of thing. Chapter 6 is entitled How Can We Transcend Enforced Positivity in the Workplace and Beyond? So first question for you, Jessamyn,
Yes.
when you hear enforced positivity, is that something you've seen in the jobs that you've had in the work culture that you've been a part of?
Enforced positivity. The first thing when I hear that phrase that comes to mind is the word California. Because
Why is that?
when I moved to California, I felt like people there did not complain. They
Mm.
would do anything but complain. And I guess maybe it's a culture difference, but
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to me like people just did not bitch and moan in the same way that was more socially accepted on the East Coast,
Mm.
where
Mm-hmm.
complaining is like how you make conversation. So I guess, but I do think you're right. That idea of like being very careful how you word things
Mm-hmm.
and using positive language like to a fault, that resonates with me a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, that comes up with, parenting stuff too, because we're constantly barking at the kids, do this, brush your hair, brush your teeth, get in bed. And sometimes we have to stop ourselves and say like, oh my god, have I said one nice thing to this child today? But at work I would also say like anytime you're delivering bad news,
Mm-hmm.
like I personally will tread lightly, and I'll say things like, I have higher priorities that I am tending to right now, such
Mm-hmm.
as X and Y, and therefore I'm not able to take on this third, fourth, fifth thing at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll have to come later. And nobody wants to hear that. And nobody wants to hear me say, I haven't gotten around to it yet, which is the truth
Mm-hmm.
because I've been doing a zillion things. And I would definitely say people are very sensitive when they're delivering bad news, but I love it when people drop it like a bomb and they're like, that isn't done yet. I'm not done yet. I haven't finished that. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
working on that, or I can't even get to that. Like it's not happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that is so not unnatural, but it's just not like the first choice I would make to like be like, hey, bad news, everyone. I'm gonna let you all down by not doing this thing that I
Mm-hmm.
said I could do or I was gonna do. Like I just I love like when people speak truth to power and they're like, this is not happening. We're not doing it.
Yeah,
And
and I feel like sometimes I have the like confidence to say that, but then I always try to follow it up with something that's like, but it's going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. And it doesn't just apply to like when delivery isn't good, good delivery isn't going to happen, or or I have to, bring bad news about a project. It also has to like it feels like that pressure is on every time anybody like joins a meeting and is like, oh hey, how you doing? Like, how you doing? Like, what am I gonna say? Like, everything is falling apart, and like, let's spend 20 minutes with me like sitting here with Kleenexes around my desk, or
mm,
you know or
yeah.
are we going to just say everything's fine and we're going to move on to like do work? And I think like I I don't see there being I don't see there being like a space for the like the realities of like tough stuff going on, and whether that's
Mm-hmm.
personal stuff, like my kid is not sleeping or whatever, or it's professional stuff like
Is
I'm
anyone's kid sleeping? I would love to know. I'd love to meet that person whose child is sleeping.
all the children are up all the time. um and but it also applies to like I'm just like not having a good relationship or a good day or a good meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, how do
Yeah.
we like we don't in reality have space for that, in my opinion. So I think that's why we like tend towards the positive, because the other stuff takes a lot more time and empathy and effort. um so she also talks about that, like at work, certain kinds of suffering are more acceptable. That
Mm.
like if you have something, like the death of a family member, like those things are like very well understood, by people. And and we have policies in place, bereavement or what have you. Hopefully you have that at your job, or at least time off that you can take. And so these things are kind of like in our day to day, in terms of like accepting it, but all of that stuff happens behind closed doors. Like, you're not really supposed to come to work and be like bereaved. um
Uh-huh.
and then she also talks about how it's the other kind of suffering that is large, that is suppressed or not discussed at work, like like the not the petty stuff, but the smaller stuff, the day-to-day stuff, the stuff that we don't really have time for. um and and so I thought that was kind of interesting, and
Yeah.
made me think a lot about kind of like, what are people going through that is that is there with them every single day, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
a parent who's sick, or
Mm-hmm.
a kid who's sick, or anything along those lines.
I do think like it is interesting when you consider how much of yourself to quite like bring to work, and
Mm-hmm.
how much do you share, and that it's expected that you share something, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're sort of perceived as a robot,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
like you have nothing to offer in terms of personality, like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't really work for you. I don't think it serves people, because I was just chatting with somebody recently who was like, I tried telling a joke in my last meeting and nobody laughed. And I was like, and they said like it sucked. And I was like, I totally have been there, where you're trying to warm up the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and like the people that you're working with, and nobody wants to do it. They just want to get down to brass tacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been on the other side, where I'm like, I want to get down to brass tacks, and someone's like, hey, how was your weekend? And I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to talk about it.
No, I do not want to talk.
I
Yeah.
don't want to share.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, I think I don't know. It is
Yeah.
hard. That is a really hard thing and especially when it's bad news. Everybody is like, "Oh, how was your weekend?" "Great. I was mountain climbing." But if it's like, "Oh, I am going through something. I have something going on in my life." I honestly think most people don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to risk like getting like the overshare.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think like you have to be really careful about what you do decide to share and don't, because I don't know. I think I feel like there's a power move there. Like if you're like, "Hey, let me tell you all about myself," and the person you're talking to has more power than you
Mm-hmm.
do, then they're sort of humoring you by listening to your
Mm,
stuff.
mm,
And then if
yeah.
like have more power than the other person, and you're like, well, let me tell you all about my kid. Let me tell you all about my car trouble or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then, they don't have any choice but to listen to you and be like, uh-huh,
Yeah.
wow, that's crazy, and they may just be like, somebody kill me. I don't want to listen to this stuff. So I do think there's like a big power play there, and I am sensitive to it because I will absolutely dump my crap on people and be like, let me tell you all about, my troubles or my thoughts. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
I've done it to people who don't want to hear about it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about leaders, because I think that is, as we've talked about before, you and I have a lot of opinions about like what management and leadership could do, and I don't know what I would do in that position if I was a manager who wanted to like kind of acknowledge the dark stuff along with the light, the bright and happy stuff. And the Susan Cain talks about how sadness is really like the last great taboo in the workplace, and what do you do if you're a
Mm.
manager who wants to like realize that and create a culture that supports that, or maybe even turns that into something that is that can be like more productive uh
Ugh.
for your team. And that she talks about one study which I thought was interesting and worth bringing up, because I think a lot about our really high up leaders and in organizations. And the study was in 2009, and it showed that or they found that showing sorrow rather than anger leads to better outcomes for leaders, including stronger relationships with followers and greater perceptions of effectiveness.
Hmm.
Do you think that Do you think that you've first of all, I
Yeah.
guess, have you you know, like I was trying to think, what is an example of when I've seen a leader express sorrow?
Sorrow. I mean, I guess the only thing I can say is I have had many times colleagues who've lost, usually it's parents.
Yeah.
They've lost their parent and, it happened and they're still trying to, work. They'll maybe take a couple days off, but they come back and they're still dealing with it and they still talk about it and they share, and um I've seen where people tear up and are like, I'm going through this right now and it's really difficult. And I've seen people who are like, I feel better, it's okay. And I'm like, ooh, that's almost worse. And I guess like I wouldn't say that I've had somebody like super high up share emotion about
Hmm.
something personal. Usually
Hmm.
it's like people in my same peer group or like a level up.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
about you?
totally. And like I don't know what it is about like the C level or the, you know, direct whatever they're called, you know, like vice president, director of blah blah blah. Like
Mhm.
I don't know what it is about that, but the more I see them as like talking heads and touting
Mhm.
positivity, it even in circumstances where things are not going super well, like it just makes me distrust them. It just makes me feel even further away. It doesn't make me feel connected, and it makes me feel like what they're telling me is just, you know, like lip service. And I have to say that like it is true that most of these people are men, and so like I don't feel like the culture is there to like even like make it okay for men a lot of times to show those emotions in public or, you know, in smaller settings. So like that's one. And then if you're a woman at that level, I can imagine that like you're just trying to play, and you know, these are gender stereotypes and there's obviously a spectrum of gender, but like I expect that at that level you're just trying to keep up, or you know, you're just trying to like play the game, and that's totally fine. You are one of very few people at that level. um and so I just don't see it happening a lot at those really high up levels, and I guess I would like to see that someday, of just kind of, and not honestly not about something like somebody passing away in their family or something like that. Like I want to
Mhm.
see it about like performance, or like the company, or where things are at, or having to you know, having to do something other than like something that the shareholders told them to do, or like just like I don't know, like, you know, with this whole, a lot of people are having return to the office motions like you are. And like, maybe just somebody being like, this sucks. Like, I'm sorry, you
Mhm.
know, but like, I wonder
Yeah.
how that would have happened, how that would have gone down differently if people were maybe a little bit more holding both the positive and the negative at the same time, and kind of sharing that like, yeah, this is great for some reasons, but it also sucks for other reasons, and like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, like it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
I I
anyway, yeah.
I think one thing I've learned though is that the higher up you go, the more crafted and non-spontaneous the communication is,
Hmm.
and the more care is put into it. So I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you're emailing somebody who's like a higher level than you, and you have to like write a draft of the email and have somebody look at it and, oh, don't do that, don't include these links, or don't use
Hmm.
this, whatever. And like the higher you go, like the more intense that type of stuff is.
Yeah.
So I guess I wouldn't necessarily, like, as an employee, lean on the upper echelons necessarily to give me like any sort of therapeutic relief of, or acknowledgement of my, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just would never expect it, I think.
Yeah,
But
which
yeah.
actually circles back to the first thing we were talking about the Etsy higher up that spoke at UXPA, and I wonder what it's like to work there. And maybe people have different experiences than we do.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I think we should wrap up the episode here. I do think the book is a super worthwhile read, especially even if you're not going through something, you know, difficult in your life. We're all going through pandemic, inflation, our friends being laid off. Like it's a good read for, I would say, this era, this season of our lives. And the book ends, it's not really a spoiler or anything, but the book ends with talking about like the idea that this melancholic feeling can be turned into you know, things you change about your life, or things you create out of your, you know, the pain that you can't alleviate. You can turn it into something. And so she leaves the reader with a question to kind of ponder for themselves, which is, you know, what are you longing for? And so I will leave that question out there. We don't have time to answer it right now, but I think it's a good thing to think about. And we maybe will revisit on another episode. But for now, if you would like to get in touch with us about a topic, about this topic or about another topic, please write to us at survivingux@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you. Well, that wraps it up, Jessamyn. It's so good to be back with you.
Yeah, you too. Talk to you soon.
Right. Bye. Bye. Surviving UX is hosted and edited by Jessamyn Edwards and Meg Kramer. Our theme music is, among other things, the on-hold music for Cisco phones, Opus No. 1 by Tim Carlton and Derek Deal. Whether you're getting a scoop of bitter today, or a scoop of sweet, or a swirl of both, we'll be back with another episode pretty soon. Happy summer.